Welcome to Inside Lines, where the real is accepted and the fake is deflected. We're your hosts, Atoya, Burleson.
And I am Tia Avril, and welcome to our final installment of our Highlight Her series for Super Bowl 55.
Our guest is Denise White. She is the CEO of EAG Sports Management. She's an expert in public relations, marketing, and crisis management. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So, Denise, tell us where your passion for sports and sports management began.
If I'm being completely candid, I didn't really necessarily have one in the beginning. When I started out in the business, I was a journalist. Mm-hmm. Loved sports, but was a journalist. And then segued into entertainment. And when I had the opportunity to work in sports, it was really unconventional how I landed in sports. And was really fortunate. I was working with entertainers at the time. I worked with Robin Givens, Samuel Jackson, Kim Whitley, Miguel A. Nunez, and had the opportunity to work with a rookie football player who had just been drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, Tony Gonzalez. And I said yes, not sure what I was getting myself into by working with athletes. But what I found when I started working with him was not only a love for sports, but a love for the body of work that I thought I could potentially bring to sports. Being a woman in a male-dominated industry at that time, which was almost 23 years ago, was a little bit difficult back then. But that's kind of how I segued it from entertainment into sports.
And so tell us, how did you know, or when did you decide, you know what, I want to start my own firm? What made that spark come alive?
I was working with Kim Whitley. She's an actress at the time, and I had entertainers. And I always pay homage to him, and he appreciates it when I do. But Samuel Jackson, who was a dear friend and someone that I worked with at the time, said, why are you working for other people? Why don't you just open up your own company? And that way, although you still be working for other people, it'll be your own firm. Like, stop. He said it so gingerly as stop pussyfooting around and you can do this yourself, right? In Samuel Jackson tone, right?
Right.
And I thought about it and I was like, he's right. I probably can do this myself. But I went out on a limb. It was, again, very unconventional. I started out, didn't know what I was doing, opening a business, had no business plan. I barely had enough money to pay my rent at the time. But I decided to do it. And I'm really glad that I did.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's always good to have people around you that can see things in you and see kind of like the next level for you and start planting those seeds. So I like that. So you mentioned that when you first started, and even now, the industry is predominantly male. So how did you navigate that space?
When I first started, it still unfortunately has a little bit of the tone today, but much better today than it was when I first started. But when I first started, there were no women in the business, on the business side, very few. There was one female agent at the time, and I didn't see anybody that was doing what I was doing. And I opened up my company because I felt there was a gap between player agents and all the other stuff that agents say they do, but they don't, right? Mm-hmm. The marketing, the PR, the crisis management, the day-to-day, the business management, all of that stuff. So EAG was formed because when I started working with Tony, I started seeing a gap, right? Like the agents want to take care of the players and negotiate their contracts, but they don't necessarily want to do all the other stuff because it's not high paying, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes some of it's free, right? You got to handle this person or that person or whatever. So I was like, well, why can't there be a one-stop shop that takes care of all the athletes' needs off the field or off the court, and then let the agent do the contract, right? And for a short amount of time, I thought, well, maybe I'll become an agent. And then as much as I started learning about the agents, I decided I wasn't going to do that. I like to sleep at night, and I don't want to have to worry about undercutting people or stealing people away from other people. It's just not my personality. And so I just was like, I'd rather do this in this space. And so what I found was when I first got into sports, because there was a lack of women, I was very marginalized in the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, who is she? What is she doing? Oh, she's probably just trying to land an athlete. And that couldn't have been further from the truth. Mm-hmm. She'll be gone tomorrow. I mean, I heard it all, right? Mm-hmm. Mostly from my athletes, because the agents and all the other people didn't really have the guts to say that to my face, but I certainly heard it through third party. But you know what? At the end of the day, for me, it wasn't about what people were saying about me or trying to say about me or trying to marginalize my work because I was a woman. It was about what I knew I could accomplish given the opportunity and showing the work that I could do and then proving to the agents, the teams, the leagues, all those, that I was legit, right? That I was there for the right reasons. And I was there to do a body of work that I knew I could be proud of within the industry, regardless of what sex I was.
Right.
And it took a long time. You know, there's a lot of hit and misses. You know, I obviously created a company that primarily over the past 23 years has only employed women. But there's also hit and misses with that too, because when you pave a way for people, sometimes those people aren't always appreciative, right? So you've had to step back for a moment and you're trying to bring women up with you in the industry. And then unfortunately, sometimes, you know, there's a bad apple in the bunch that wants to take advantage of what you've tried to provide them, right? By trying to steal your clients, just like the men were doing with each other.
Right.
But again, being a woman in the industry when I first started was a huge struggle because of the marginalization and because of just being dismissed all the time, right? But if you know me and you know my personality, I like when people tell me I can't do something. So I like to prove people wrong, and I like to prove them wrong through the work that I can do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And like it lights a fire right up under you.
Oh, let me tell you, like no other.
So you talked about people telling you that you could not do something, right? So tell us on the business side of things, what are some unexpected challenges that you face in creating this that are outside of what people said, but more internally?
I think some unexpected challenges in the beginning were the women that I did come up, with, I guess you could say, a couple, were the ones that were almost not helpful, right? Like I felt like back then, every woman felt like there was only one seat at the table. And if you didn't take that seat and hold on to it for dear life, you weren't going to get to keep it, right? So you had to push other people away, which meant other women, right? When in my nature, when people know me personally, they know I want to do everything I can do to help you, especially if you're a woman. Hence the 23 years of women I've employed. But back then it was almost like a fear, like, well, there's only one seat. So, you know, hold on to that for dear life. So I didn't get help from, you know, again, there weren't that many women. There was like one or two, but I think the unexpected challenges back then were I wasn't getting help from anybody but a man, one man in particular, Tom Condon, who's an agent who really didn't see me as a woman and didn't see me as a threat, right? Knew I wasn't going to take guys from one agent to another agent, which of course that was one of the hurdles in the beginning was they thought I was going to steal their clients and then take them to another agency, right? Because the guys were listening to me. But you know, being a woman and the hurdles in the beginning, there was tons of them, but unexpectedly, to answer your question, I found some of my expectations for other women in the industry kind of fall flat because, and I know now why they did, because we were so fearful that we weren't going to have that one seat at the table. We didn't realize that if we still started helping each other, there could be more than one seat, right? Like there is today.
To your point, they were absolutely operating out of fear. But I know there's like multiple spaces where you walk in and you really are looking for somebody that looks like you and you want to cling on and, you know, blaze the trail together. But it does come as a complete shock when you're like, well, wait a minute, what just happened here?
Exactly. So, yeah. And it's, you know, and when you deal with men 99% of the time, I remember I had Ray Crockett as a client, and I don't know if y'all remember probably Nate does, remember the Best Damn Sports Show that was on Fox.
Yeah.
And I was negotiating his contract because I negotiate. I just don't negotiate the player deals, but I negotiate TV deals. And I was negotiating his deal with Best Damn Sports Show. And for the first time ever, I was negotiating with a woman. And I was like, do I be angry? Do I be tough? Do I be... I didn't know how I was supposed to, you know, because usually when I'm in the room with men, I'm like, I got to be tough.
You got to be stoned.
Weakness, right? I was like, here's this woman, Debbie Spander. She works for Wasserman now, and she's counsel over there, and an agent, but she was counsel for Fox. And I was like, I'm not too sure how I respond to her. Do I be tougher than her? Do I, But it was the first time I'd ever negotiated with a woman, and I wasn't even too sure how to react to that. It was a new thing for me.
Yes,
that's awesome.
So you've been given the name the Fixer because of how you handle crisis management. So would you say you're like the Olivia Pope of politics?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been. They've been. I didn't name that myself. I've been told that, but yeah, I mean, I think when you, for me, it's always been about. Look, everybody gets into trouble in our lifetimes, right? The only difference with athletes is that they do it in front of the public eye, unfortunately, right?
Absolutely.
I always say this, before there was the internet, which now makes me archaic, before there was your cell phones that could tape anything and everything, right? We had a lot more time to get an athlete out of trouble, right? To fix the problem, to make it go away. Because let me tell you something, if Michael Irvin and all those guys were playing today, it would be a whole nother ballgame, right? A whole nother ballgame, because those guys have some stories. So, and I know a lot of those stories. But back then, there was no internet. There was, the news cycle was like every 7 days versus every 7 seconds, right?
Yes.
So fixing problems today is a little bit different because you're running up against a time clock that it does not serve in your best interest. Because usually it hits the media and now you're scrambling to fix it as it's coming out versus fix it before it ever hits the media. Right. But yes, to your question, I was given that name because I do come in and I'm known in the industry, not just football, but other sports, as coming in and fixing the problems, not just making them go away. I always like to preface this, not just making them go away, but if the athlete needs help, getting them help as well. My goal when an athlete gets into trouble is for that never to happen again, right? For him to become the best father, the best husband, the best athlete, the best person he can be after he's gone through it. And sometimes I've had clients that have repetitively gotten into trouble, right? And you're repetitively trying to fix it. And eventually you do, but some guys don't learn sooner than others, right? And sometimes it's just an age thing. They have to mature and grow up. These guys get into the leagues at young ages, 19, 20, 21, and we're expecting them to act like adults and with all this money. And it's not always the easiest. And then if they don't have the proper representation, they don't necessarily get the best guidance. So you're really trying to handle all of that at once when you are fixing the problem.
It's so true. When you think about all the different guys and, being so young and you're given so much so fast. So you don't really have time to soak it all up or make sense of it or digest it all. So, just like with your kids, they have to bump their heads a few times to figure it out. And you were the mama to that.
Don't have the wrong representation or the wrong people around them, because then it's just it's a nightmare, right? So I see some of these guys and they'll get into trouble and then I'll be like, well, look at your camp, right? You know what I mean? Like your camp isn't helping you out here. So, it's
like somebody got to say it.
You gotta weigh those variables of why the athlete got in trouble in the first place, right? I hate the people that are like, yeah, sure, go do it. Dude, you're fine. You're young. I'm like, no. Slow down. Let's put this into perspective here, right?
They're usually saying it because they want to join in.
And so, there's a lot to get in trouble with these days.
Let's talk about you being featured in Men's Journal as an expert contributor. That's pretty amazing.
Oh, thank you. I'm always, except when I was a journalist, I'm usually been behind the scenes and I obviously prefer that much better. But I was sitting with a journalist who was supposed to be interviewing one of my clients at the time. And of course the client was late, which never happens. And so that journalist started asking me questions like, how'd you get in the business? And I just started kind of telling him my story. And I was a foster kid. I was separated from my twin. My mother was mentally ill. I have a lot of a backstory. And because he's asking me, why do you think your athletes listen to you? Why do you why are you different than other women that try to be in the business? Why are you successful? And I said, well, I don't hold anything back. I tell the truth. Sometimes it's painful, but they've got to hear it.
Yeah.
And I also let them know that I'm not perfect, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't raised with a silver spoon in my mouth. I came from struggle and from pain. And I feel like that sometimes helps you connect with athletes. Anyways, long story short, he loved my story, just telling him. And he asked if he could write about me. And at first I said no, because I was unsure about how that would look, right? I'm the one representing the athletes. But then I ultimately said yes, because he wanted to center it around health, right? Like, and mental health. I'm big on mental health because of my mom. And so he wrote it. And then once he wrote it, it was like a firestorm that changed my life a bit. So, but I was very thankful for him because I thought he did it justice.
Rewinding a little bit, you mentioned your mom suffered from mental illness. When you think about the complexities and the pressures and things that athletes experience at such a young age, like how do you help them navigate that space, right? Because mental health is so important.
It's so important. And, when I first started in the business, it was so taboo to even talk about it. Nobody wanted to talk about it. If athletes had a problem, they didn't want to admit it. Now, because Brandon Marshall is one of my guys and was one of my guys when he was having a mental health crisis before he came out and told people that he had a mental illness. And I feel like today it's definitely a different time in our society that we're now more open about it and seeking help more and being able to talk about it. I think allowing the athletes that I work with, and even the ones that I don't, to know my story allows them to come and talk to me, right? Like I had someone from the league call me a few months ago and was like, hey, I've got someone who's in trouble. He doesn't want the team to know, right? Because they feel like the teams are going to judge them or even it might impede their next deal.
Yes.
And he's like, but I trust you, Denise. Can you talk to him? And I'm like, absolutely. So he called me, we talked, I got him a therapist where he plays that doesn't have anything to do with the team. And so he started getting help and he's doing really well now. But it's just being able to talk to guys and letting them know, the league put together this task force. The problem with that is the minute an athlete feels like the league or his team knows about it, they don't want anything to do with it, right?
It's true.
And as much as I applaud the league and teams for putting those people in place so their athletes can come, have someone to talk to, there's still that unspoken, I don't want to say rule, but unspokenness of, well, if I let the team know that I'm struggling, will this hurt my deal? Will this hurt my next option, right? Will they hold this against me? And I think more so than not, athletes feel that way. So they're very apprehensive in using the team's people or the league's people. So that's where I've come in. Obviously not every case, but as many as I've been referred. Because a lot of times, if I'm being completely candid, I do this for free. I mean, there's a lot of people that send guys to me and need help, and I don't charge for that, right? I feel weird about charging for that.
Right.
Now, if I'm doing a crisis management case, of course we charge. But when there's an athlete struggling with his mental health and he just needs some help, I'll help him in a heartbeat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. And I think it's great that they have people like you in place that are outside of the league. It does give them that comfort involved. But let's talk about you and your life. There's a life story that's being developed, right? Into a TV show. It's produced and starred by Jennifer Aniston.
Yes.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yes, congratulations.
So tell us a little more about that.
I mean, we've been going back and forth. Obviously, the pandemic put everything on hold. At first, it was a film. And then it changed into a TV show called Hail Mary. And so we've been going back and forth on production and scripts. And if you know anything about Hollywood, it's hurry up and wait.
Yes.
And then you put the pandemic in place, it just changed everything. But I was very, very, after the article came out, I had a lot of people inquire from movie houses to production companies about doing a story on my life, more so about the struggles that I went through and then how I ended up doing what I'm doing now. And I thought, you know what, at first I was a little apprehensive as I was with the article, but then I thought if we can focus on mental health at some point and we can reach some people, then I'm willing to do this, right? Because I grew up with my grandmother telling me, don't ever talk about your mom because people will judge you, right? So instead of saying my mom was alive, I didn't say she was dead, but I didn't talk about my mom, right? My grandmother raised me. And so because I was fearful that people would judge me. And so if this movie or film or now TV show can help people in any aspect of mental health, that's my focus. I know it's going to show a whole bunch of other stuff, but mental health is really the caveat for me, and more importantly, something that I hope gets expressed throughout the show. It's a TV show now, not a film. Which I think every episode can bring something different, where there's some sort of lesson or moment where you're like, I'm going to cheer for her. I'm going to cry with her. I'm going to laugh with her. I'm going to get mad with her, but I'm going to learn something throughout the episode. Right.
That's good.
And open those doors to talk more freely about mental health.
That's so awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you, Denise. Thank you, Denise, so much for taking the time to chat with us. We'll be on the lookout for the TV show, and we'll be looking forward to more things that you're doing.
And real quick, tell us.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me, you guys. I really enjoyed it.
No, thank you.
Thank you. And thanks so much. Why don't you share with everyone where they can find you?
Oh, so Instagram is at Denise White _EAG.
Okay.
And our website is eagsportsmanagement.com.
Perfect.
Thanks so much, Denise.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. You guys have a great time in Tampa.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Bye.
Be safe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.